Om Shanti. Welcome to Interview with Raj Yogi. And continuing with the theme of timing this month and the idea of readiness. So, being ready or accurate in timing. The topic is spiritual readiness. So, as usual, we'll start with a short reflection. Usually, as we go through the day, we find that at some point we're quite reactive. As if we don't have a response ready in place for what might come. Just as the bear prepares for hibernation, the pioneer prepares for winter. In some ways, I have to prepare for day-to-day life. Find time every day to go inside and check my spiritual inventory. I do that now. And time, particularly in a second, is my measuring tool. In a second can I, the soul, experience peace. In a second can I, the soul, let go of a thought I might have had a second ago. In a second can I, the soul, dive into those feelings of love, appreciation, respect. Not just the thought, but the feeling. Checking my spiritual inventory with the measuring tool of in a second. Om Shanti. Om Shanti. So welcome to those who have joined. As Judy has mentioned, the topic is spiritual readiness. So just a little brief explanation of what inspired this topic actually was probably about a month or so ago, some conversations during the interviews about timing. When we'd always mention about, okay, so what can a soul do if they're trying to move forward or something's not happening? And Judy would always say, well, there's timing. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? You mean that you just sit there, wait patiently, and do nothing? And so we were really inspired to talk about timing. We're using time in a worthwhile way. And it's been very illuminating, at least it has been for me, in terms of it's a very proactive attitude one is using in terms of choices, which is what time is really all about. So spiritual readiness is quite interesting because I found the reflection quite interesting, probably on two counts. Because there's a feeling just listening to an experiencing with the commentary about being able to be in a state where I can be able to adjust and to be able to flex and use my capacities at any moment. And But the other thought that came to mind was the readiness to be able to even, you know, to do something useful for myself. So, is there a commonality between both?
We have the saying that service or care of the self is inseparable to care of the outer world. And so, this idea that I think in general, again, is it the soul's time? Do they have that? It's always amazing when we watch animals, and it's called animal instinct or intuition. The bear is a great example that they start to stock up for the winter. They're taking care of themselves. They're also taking care of fitting into the ecosystem, healthy functioning of the ecosystem. And it just seems like they get this instinct, I have to get ready. And so they become proactive. And it's care of self, but also I will not be a problem or burden to those around me because I'm taking care of the self. I won't be part of the problem. And so, do I have that sensitivity? I have to get ready. I have to get ready. Maybe I'm not sure for what, but just this feeling comes that I need to, and often when we look back in retrospect, we say, oh, there were so many signs. How could I not see them? So many signs that this is what I needed to do. And I totally miss them. And we've talked repeatedly about how desires blind the soul. So I don't see the obvious. But if I can, again, that disinterest, the sign that it's my time, so I start to not have interest in things I desired before, it's as if my vision starts to clear and I can see what is beneficial for the self and for those around me. And there will always be, spirituality is beautiful because it's win-win. What is benevolent is beneficial always for the self and those around me.
So, for those who have taken the course or taken some of the workshops, there's the element of knowledge that plays into this. So, when it comes to timing and readiness, how does understanding or knowledge, how does it support one's readiness?
I really liked this topic as we went into today. It really explored what we call a divine intellect. So, classically, knowledge is connected to wisdom. And over, as we move through time, it becomes increasingly intellectualism is connected to wisdom, which actually isn't the case. So, what happens with this study is we look at a body of knowledge that is designed to non violently extricate us from desires, largely through seeing the big picture. And as that happens, we begin to function in a more and more accurate way, which is wisdom. So, this, sort of, we call it sort of being able to detach or pull out or go into the big picture, become the observer, less sort of entangled in the minutiae with attachments and desires. And that's wisdom. To be that liberated is the wisdom. So the knowledge, and I think everyone, it's not even spiritual knowledge. The minute we get a piece of information that we might have been missing, but this piece of information that just completely helps us to understand what's going on in front of us. We might have been so confused, and the confusion comes because, well, that's not how I would do it. What are they doing? What do they, and it's like then I hear the story from their side. Maybe I get the bigger pictures. Ah, I understand. And suddenly my mind is freed, and now I can respond in a different way. So we really have to work with a body of knowledge that liberates or frees us to, if you will, open up that innate wisdom in the soul. And that's going to require a freeing from desires. So it opens that innate wisdom. And that helps me to be more sensitive to the different cues around me. And that's when I can be proactive.
It's interesting because we were talking about disinterest in the last, maybe a couple of sessions that we did mention about last week. But it feels like knowledge helps to continue to sustain your readiness or and sustain your disinterest in the sense that it helps you stay clear of what's not really fulfilling you. Because is
Mm-hmm.
it possible that there's a disinterest and you can sort of go back to your old ways and
Mm-hmm.
kind of get stuck there?
Yeah, I really like this very powerful form of disinterest, which I think is a pretty reliable measure that it's the real thing. Um, it's not the disinterest where I physically move away from it. So it's very easy to say, no, I have no interest. But the moment I'm around it, man, I'm really interested. But to have that disinterest while I'm around it, that's the real thing. That's the sign that it's the real thing. And that's a really good starting point.
When you were sharing that, I was thinking about one of the students who says, I care a lot about things I don't care about.
Yeah.
So, what's that all about? Is there like a little part of me that's just watching this addiction?
That's exactly what it is. It's addiction. It's like sort of these empty gestures of the soul that I'm just so used to doing, so familiar, but I am getting nothing out of it anymore. But I can't seem to stop because now it's so familiar, so addictive. And that might be a phase of moving towards letting go.
It's quite interesting how we say that there's a little part of me watching.
Mm-hmm.
So, in terms of again spiritual readiness, there's this capacity to even see things in a different way because of the old operating system is just not helping. Then does the little part of me watching become more and more prominent, so to speak, when there is knowledge, so that
Mm.
readiness is not just a static thing, but it's like I can become um, something more receptive through time, and then I can move towards this, as you had shared in the reflection, a capacity that I can access in a second.
Yeah, some of the metaphors that we use with knowledge is the water of knowledge and also the oil of knowledge, pouring the oil of knowledge into the soul. So I think there's a little spark there of readiness, of disinterest. And then as I pour oil in, it feeds the flame of that wisdom the flame is a symbol of truth or enlightenment. It feeds it. For some reason, one of the images that always come into my mind, it's very old technology, but these what are they called? Tape, in the cash register, the tape that prints out your receipt. And there comes a point when it comes to the end of the roll. And then as they're I've done this a bit myself, but it has to take. The new roll has to take. And then once it takes, it kind of just, but that catching, sometimes the cashier, I know she sort of struggles with a bit getting it to thread and catch properly, but once it does, it's great, it's on a roll. So that catching is really important, and I kind of have to make sure that that catching has happened, not just sort of walk away and assume, but have I really caught the essence of what's going on, and does it really, really speak to me? Readiness, when I see it, I see the word read in it as well. And very often spiritual readiness is connected to the idea of being a visionary, that I can sort of see things in a far-sighted way that others may not see. I always enjoy that sort of symbol of being able to feel the wind, or the feeling that, okay, there's a change in the season coming, very subtle, very, very subtle sensitivity. And then you start to prepare, right? Even before there's any signs that the season's coming, you're already starting to prepare. So being able to read or see or have a vision, I need to be able to, in this case with spiritual readiness, be able, a sensitivity, increasing sensitivity to what's invisible. So I'm starting to have a disinterest in what we call the material or the physical. It's just not giving contentment anymore. I don't want to throw the whole thing out. I don't want to say, well, I don't want to live anymore, or I'll just go to the jungle. That's not what we're talking about. But I'm ready for a different way of operating in the physical world. that, of course, is from the inside out.
So, a part of this wisdom in terms of knowledge, is there also in terms of, I wouldn't use the word wisdom, but a capacity to increasingly also be honest with myself so that I can maintain that readiness? Because it feels like we need to constantly be ready every day or every moment. So, because we constantly have to let go of the old, and there's just so much in terms of stuff going on inside that can slow us down, create noise, distraction, etc.
I know you had a workshop recently on our inner compass, and that's what honesty. I mean, if we have a compass and our life depends on it, we certainly want it to be truthful. We want it to be properly calibrated. It's like, oh, is it really pointing in the right direction? We want to feel that it is reliable. And to imagine that our inner compass totally corrupted, got off whack because, again, of desire, attachment, ego. So this first, the sensitivity of, oh, my inner compass isn't working, because very often souls, I am so honest. I am. How can I be any more honest? And what we've discovered is it's not possible without the truth to be honest. It's just not possible. So if I don't have the truth, I actually can't be honest. So it's one side, this again, the role of spiritual knowledge or eternal truths, expose to it, really reflect on it, hopefully accept it. Okay, now it's making adjustments, calibrating my compass. Now I can start to be honest. And again, this honesty, honoring the best in the self, or being able, it's not about looking at situations or people. Honesty around the self. I heard an interview the other day, and it really touched me because it was so much, it was so fascinating. The soul was sharing. They are a very, very popular performer, but they, I mean, they're extremely popular in social media and everything. But you sort of hear their inner struggles, and you're shocked, right? Because they have so much capacity. They're so gifted, but they're so, the insecurity, the struggles inside. And one of the things they struggled with, they kept saying, I wasn't honest with myself. I didn't say what I was feeling. And as I'm listening to this, I thought, actually, ego was just so distressing you. So honesty would have been to recognize ego is distressing me. But we have these concepts of honesty that have no element of truth in it. And so it doesn't actually get us and make us ready for anything new. We start to create boundaries. We start to be more rebellious. We start to say what we feel. But none of this is moving us in a happier direction, a new direction where I benefit and those around me benefit. So I think their journey is still in progress. I think it's beautiful they want to be honest. But for my feeling, anyways, I need truth to start to be honest with the self.
Maybe you kind of answer my question then. I mean, their journey is in progress because of needing truth. But how about the element of just like, okay, I can't keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like it's killing me or it's just distressing me.
Mhm.
But you don't have truth at that moment. Is there anything?
That's readiness. So that's why I have so much hope for that soul, because I can hear that they are ready. As they continue to go, they'll become more ready, because there's that saying, which I'm going to mix up, I'm sure, but when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So we saw this definitely with Brahma Baba. That as he started to, and there's usually a form that's articulated. In this case, it was his journal when he was ready. And it comes from a very deep place. And we say an honest place, because the truth, the cry for truth is starting in the soul. And that's when the teacher appears. So it will happen.
So it's the cry for truth.
Yeah.
It might not be truth at that moment, but you're really receptive.
You're ready. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because we do always share that this body of knowledge is really for transformation from the inside out. But some do use it to cope with things, and it's just the way it is. It's their timing. But sometimes you do hear, and it often, it's just an observation where someone go, "Okay, Nora, I'm so tired. give me a meditation. I'm desperate right now. And then,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm good now. Okay, next
Mm-hmm.
time I go into a desperate moment. Or when some goes, oh, this is it. This is it. This really matters to me. But
Mm-hmm.
and then they don't come back, and that's totally fine. But
Mm-hmm.
is are they not in that spiritual readiness?
I think that the soul is reaches a point where they're ready, but the resistance is like a blocker. It's like a synapse blocker or something. It's blocking, trying to create a block to the receptors for that readiness. They're always, because the status quo will always, we're talking about readiness to transform. So there's going to be a backlash from the status quo, and it's going to try to inhibit that readiness to transform. So it requires an incredible, a deep readiness, a real pull, a real feeling of, I have to do this. And, when you said coping, I sort of compare it to the idea that, it's again Noah's Ark. Well, let's take a less intense example that, the weather's getting a little cold. I think I'll buy a scarf, right? So I can cope with the colder weather. Where this is, okay, it's going to get so cold that I won't be able to go to the store. I need to buy starting, growth. Like I'm ready for the changes that are coming. I am changing myself for the changes that are coming versus I don't change, but I just change the things around me. So this study is beautiful because it focuses 100% on transformation of self. Everything else can stay the same around you. 100% transformation of the self. I'm not trying to manipulate relationships or situations. I'm trying to change, or we say, purify, restore the pure self. And it's because of that we say, as I change, the world changes because I am focusing. And I was thinking this today, I was like, it doesn't even matter what happens. I'm so enjoying this self transformation. Whatever happens, the result's fine, but I'm so enjoying this self transformation. That's the ideal scenario. The understanding that we change the world. So it has to be not coping with a so called changing world, but the idea that I have to change myself in order to transform the world. So, really getting straight how things actually work. And of course, that moves into the law of karma.
It's interesting you mentioned about the law of karma. Because one thing I was thinking about is why is it so important about this aspect about readiness? Do sometimes we maybe force ourselves, or more commonly try to force others to change? Or oftentimes you hear, "Oh, I wish that they would, change and take this course, and they'll know what I'm talking about."
Mm-hmm. And we always say, don't worry about that. Just keep changing yourself. So we have these qualities that came up the other day of patience, tolerance, introversion. These are really the equipment of readying the self. Very patient and patient, not in a apathetic way or inertia or apathy way, but being able to see, really again, that to read situations properly, because I'm not basing it on what I want to happen. So my intellect, my vision's working well. Able to read situations properly. We said it was being able to see behind the curtain of external circumstances. When we talk about coping, it's almost always to external circumstances. I'm not reading at all what's happening underneath. So being able to read that patience, being able to be tolerant. Tolerant means I will change. I do not need to change anything out there. And then, of course, the mechanism, the gateway to that is introversion. So that's the response.
Sounds like there could be not so healthy ramifications of trying to force something, anyways.
There'll be short term results. But again, that far sighted vision, what did I just put in motion? And desires always go. We live in a very, even just now, that watch, right? We live in a very quick response, instant messaging, fast food. We want things yesterday. And that's desire. That's the force of desire at its height. And I miss the opportunity then to read what's going on. Something I loved so much about the senior students, who we call the daddies and dadas, was their patience was remarkable. You could come in and say, I need an answer to this now. These people want an answer now. And it's like, they'll say, go sit in yoga. Come see me tomorrow. It's like, you don't seem to understand. I understand. They can read what's going on in the soul. They know exactly what is required for that soul at that time. I was in a meeting recently. It was quite profound. I was a bit of a detached observer because I parachuted in late, like late in the months of planning. And the first topic on the table was, should they change the date of this program, which I thought was radical. I'd never, I've been in a couple other projects where they managed to get that realization that, this is what you're not spiritually ready. It's like we need to become spiritually ready. So this beautiful patience, reading this and able to read the product or the program we're going to offer will not be useful. Short term, we've ticked all the boxes. But in terms of what's going to be beneficial, none of the boxes are ticked. So we need to actually reset, perhaps revamp. Fascinating, and so part of spiritual readiness, and I felt it when you were sharing, is preparing the soil to plant a seed, whatever it takes to prepare that soil. So someone might say, yeah, no, I'm ready, but maybe they need a little bit more soil preparation so that the seed can take.
So, I'm sorry, there's just a lot of rich thoughts and questions that come to mind. But I was thinking about in terms of spiritual readiness. I mean, the study is very, very deep, and there's no dull moment. But it feels like oftentimes what comes to mind of these these games I used to play as a child with my older brother, where it's like round one, okay, you have this enemy, and you thought that enemy was harder than round two, and whoa, you don't want to know what round ten's enemy is like, but there's layers in terms of to be what you can let go of, and even layers of being able to override resistance, which you probably would have been able to override, I don't know, like a year ago. So, is there like a spiritual readiness in terms of just each next step in that sense?
Yeah, I think, definitely there is progressions or a journey. We use the term pilgrimage. I know there's a very sort of devotional phrase, God doesn't give you anything you can't handle. We find out that it's actually not God who's giving anything, but this is just law of karma stuff. But the idea that just like in school, I'm progressing as my understanding deepens, then my capacities, again, that connection between knowledge and wisdom, that I'm able to respond to things in a different way. And it's very beautiful as the soul becomes more and more spiritual ready or very full in stock. They're less and less reactive, less and less interfering, more and more subtle. Because again, this is spiritual readiness. I'm filling up with spiritual stock. These are all invisible capacities. So these are signs to me that we're actually moving. Okay, before I may have had to say something to, I don't know, defend myself. And as I get more and more full, I don't need to say anything. I need to vibrate purity, good wishes, peace. This is a sign that the idea of readiness, we have the term ever ready, which says it's become your natural nature. So we're on this journey for this to become our natural nature. At first, it's hit and miss. Then I start to, with some management, be able to, as you say, I like the word flex because we think of it as flexible, but also it's flexing my spiritual muscle on demand. And there comes a point where it's natural. I don't even have to think about it. I am in that state that's ever ready.
It's fascinating. I wasn't thinking about the aspect about having my capacities ready at will. And so that's fascinating too, because when you're mentioning that you can't really separate benefit for self and benefit for world, it seems like they come hand in hand. That even and that's another question that I'll address in a second. But even to be able to be ready because if there's disinterest, it benefits myself and it unknowingly benefits others too.
Anytime in this study, we talk about the greatest violence is actually desire. It wreaks so much havoc, and if we could just have the vision to see that. So, again, reading what's actually going on. And I loved a class we had recently about subtle forms of desire. We call them royal. You know, they seem good, they seem right, but the bottom line is if I read the situation, it's a desire. So it is wreaking havoc. So it will definitely hurt the self and others. You know, even if I want this for them, it will be so good for them. In whose estimation? Do I really know what's good for some? Like, this outcome would be so good for them. If this happened, it would be so good for them. You know, sometimes I remember visiting some friends and they were experimenting with a raw food diet. This happens all the time. You should really go on this diet. You should really go on a. I would highly recommend you do not say that to people. You have no idea what's going on with their body. So I was visiting these people and they were doing a raw food diet. This body has a very severe reaction to a raw food diet. And so it really, after a couple of days, I was like, I can't, this is not going well. So, you know, but they're like, no, but this will be good for you. How do you know? How do you know? So we don't. We're just trying to sort out our own story, be honest with ourselves. But we think, no, I'm being helpful, I'm being good, I'm being. We have to look again with truth. We can see very clearly what's going on. And someone who really is full is are not reactive, they're not intrusive, they're very subtle, very respectful, but so powerful that they truly are a source of benevolence. They have so much purity.
It's interesting with spiritual readiness. And it's all about
Yeah.
timing, and timing is, we realize when we talk about law of karma, everyone's own story, that it's very subtle. I mean, even when it comes to our relationship with the physical health, we don't know again what the relationship the soul has with the body as well, and a lot of the subtle stuff going
Yeah.
on. So it sounds like, this readiness is, yes, very invisible, but we really don't really know where anyone is at with their story at all. And
No, I'm just trying to work with God really to understand my own story. Yes, I will absolutely, on the deepest level, develop empathy to my fellow man because we all really suffer from the same issues of forgetting ourselves, really losing ourselves. The details will vary for each one. And sometimes we're just looking at the detail. I mean, we often say in the study the most benevolent thing you can do for any soul is to sort of pave the way for them to connect to the Supreme Soul in a meaningful way. Not tell them what to eat or tell them how much to sleep. These are not really, we just don't know their story. But the most meaningful thing, we're told over and over, the most benevolent thing you can do. Maybe I can't come out right and say, but the vision always is I'm paving the way through my own progress, paving the way for souls to connect to the benefactor.
I'm just backtracking a moment because you had shared something I really
I
appreciate.
feel we're so off topic. I'm sorry.
No, it's about
Okay.
about readiness. But because when you were talking about that program about being ready for this, oh, there's something
Oh.
is being shared. Sister, since you mentioned about food, can we have a series in which we discuss about what's called sattvic food? We'll explain more about what that means, its benefits, and why God emphasizes, we call him Baba. So that's what Baba emphasizes on it. And also some interesting beginners level easy recipes. I was thinking we should have a cooking show again.
I know.
about
So
how
you'll have to
prepare.
we'll put your application into the interviewer. This one determines,
I think it goes
but
for
it's a
sure.
very
Yes, it
good
is.
topic.
Oh, yes,
Absolutely.
yes. And you know, it's been a while since we've actually done Raja Yoga and you, but I
Mm-hmm.
really love the topics in that. And actually, I
Mm-hmm.
think this is the great form to do it because it's,
Mm-hmm.
I think souls want to know how they move forward. Now that we're talking about timing using in a worthwhile way, how do I use these suggestions,
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle changes, or
Yeah.
just things in a worthwhile way and it's
Mm-hmm.
meaningful? So, thank you.
Great
Mhm.
question,
That's the first
suggestion.
request that we've
I'm
ever
so
had.
happy.
We've ever had this. So thank you. Mhm. I
I
think
thought
there's
there was
something
something
further
else. Let me
below.
see if I can have you.
Bear with us here.
Sorry, this is the archaic.
Maybe that's
Oh, thank you. Oh, yes, let's go.
that's good.
I was thinking I just Nora can cook and I will eat. That sounds good.
So I know we're running out of time, and we definitely want to really link soul consciousness with spiritual readiness next week.
Mm.
But I really appreciate when you were sharing about that program about, the team was saying, should we actually move the date? Because the first thing I was thinking about was quality versus quantity. And I know you touched on that in terms of, that even being spiritual ready, there are some preparations that I need to do,
Mhm.
especially in terms of using time in a worthwhile way.
Yeah, of course, the image that's coming into my mind is the racer on the starting line. It's ready, set, go. It's not ready, upset, fall apart, but ready, set, go. There is a long period of training that leads up to that moment of being at the starting line. And it's not, it's a 10-second or 11-second race, but it's actually a many year race. The amount of training that's condensed, concentrated into the quality of those 11 seconds. So again, this has to do with the sensitivity of the soul, the functioning of the inner compass, what quality means to them, and the relationship between quality and quantity for them. And I guess part of that disinterest is that quantity isn't enough. I'm not neglecting quantity, but the idea that I want it to be based on quality has that sort of emerged in the soul, because that's a huge part of where the patience comes from.
Feels like for the soul, it's a big relief to just focus on quality.
Yeah, it's not called a spiritual show. It's called spiritual readiness. So I can put a show on in a second, but really, I want to be genuinely full. And this is spiritual capacities you can't fake. They're not showy. They're all completely incognito. We're often told in this study that how each one is doing is very incognito. We can be sitting in a room and everyone appears on the outside to be really engaged yogis. They're sitting with straight backs, their eyes are open, they're focused, they're not even blinking, their contacts are falling out. It's just so, but who knows what's going on inside? It's very incognito. As I become spiritual ready, then I become more sensitive. So we say antaryami, I'm more sensitive to what's going on at the incognito level. So we have that wonderful scenario in the small meeting room with Daddy Janky, the 30 of us or whatever. Everyone's looking like they're hanging on her every word. And she's like, only 2 or 3 of you are soul conscious. She could tell. We all looked completely spiritually engaged. We all look like good yogis. She says, only 2 or 3 of you are soul conscious. So because that soul was in such a full state, the way they could read was like an X-ray. It was very powerful. The drish when you're with that soul, it's just. I would just say I'm not even going to bother to make a show or anything because I can read it. There's no
Right.
point.
It's interesting. I know that we're running out of time, but
Mhm.
it felt like as if we're talking about quality. Like you
Mm.
could capture in that moment for her all the years of her spiritual preparation to be able um, to have that capacity, because I was thinking about when you're sharing, readiness isn't just those 11 seconds of racing. It's like when you're seeing someone perform, I think that we forget that. We just think,
Yeah.
oh, it's just great. We
Yes.
don't think about all the preparations. It's just like Daddy Goals or the picture right behind you. I mean, when
Mm.
you see her, you don't realize you're seeing a whole like lifetime of practice just when she just walks, just when she just, it's just
Mm-hmm.
fascinating.
Mm-hmm. It's very beautiful. Such quality effort, accurate effort, a real sensitivity to what maybe her future would be, her future part. At least those around her knew her future part. And so she was able to train at that level spiritually to become ready for that future part that perhaps others couldn't see. But she was with a soul who was a visionary, could really read situations. So, and I did always enjoy that. I felt Daddy Gulzar obviously could read, but she was just so detached and loving that she just radiated good wishes. That's all she did. So even her drishti was very clean. Daddy Janky, it always felt like you're being x-rayed. And I don't mind. It's quite refreshing. So it's these souls that could see the call of the time, see the directions, and made this remarkable, yes, quality, incognito, honest spiritual endeavor. So they became very full. So they were ready to respond to every situation in a benevolent way, but they could also read every situation. So then they could inspire others to become spiritually ready too.
Well, thank you, JD, and thank you for the suggestions. We'll take into our next future
Please write again if
sessions.
it doesn't seem to be forthcoming. Remind
Yes,
us.
no, I'm as soon as the session's over, I'll be writing that down. This is
Mm-hmm.
a very rich session, and there are some other thoughts that come to mind. So we hope to capture them all next week, especially this double meaning of just even being ready to study and actually becoming ready when you're at full capacity is quite a
Mm.
fascinating aspect. And so we will continue with part two next week. And again, you're always welcome to write any comments, questions in the chat box, or topics. You can always email us as well. But we will continue with our little reflection now.
This idea of spiritual readiness is ultimately an expression of the highest form of self care. Just as when one starts to collect a stock of food so they're ready for uncertain times, I want to collect a stock of spiritual capacities that are so necessary at this time. I don't want my mind and heart to constantly be pulled and pushed by an ever changing outer world. I want to take the time reading the call of the time to study, prepare my mind and heart to be a source of light, stability, hope, peace, reassurance, compassion. And of course, I experience all of those for the self first. I benefit, and those around me, all of humanity, will benefit. This beautiful path, the highest path of self care, careful. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you for joining this evening. I think there is one more comment
Oh,
right
yes.
below.
Well, I think Richard was responding to the idea of you cooking and me
Oh, no,
eating.
there's some.
And then
Another.
Binny said,
Oh, yes, yes, we do. Do have a workshop in May as well. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Judy, of upcoming sessions. Pop quiz.
wow, it's unbelievable, but we're in the last week of April. And I think we've pretty much confirmed our schedule for May. A lot will stay the same. I think our drop in programming remains the same. We're also looking, which includes inner fitness, self care, etc. And I believe we've got a workshop on forgiveness. Is that May 16th? The third Sunday of the month. So it will be, in a way, just before World Meditation Hour that day, a little break in between. And so that's definitely a part of preparing the soil. So that's happening. And is there anything else? The website will be updated very soon. So thank you for joining this session. And until next time, Om Shanti.